What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we have, of course, more trade news coming out as we continue to get closer day by day to the NFL trade deadline, as losses continue to pile up for the Jets, and we get, more rumors around the job security for Aaron Glenn and company. Nonetheless, it feels like we either see new names or we see cycling trends with a lot of these players. And the one at the forefront today is Quinnen Williams, which is a player that, excuse me, I don't think many of us necessarily really expected to buy into anything, but there's definitely more noise creeping up. There's more evidence for why this could be a decision that makes sense for this coaching staff, and a lot of that really is just around the return value, right? The player most likely to get you a first round pick, maybe a couple of day threes, in the worst case situation, where Quinnen Williams is really a consistent top 5 player around this position. At best, was kind of the guy right behind Aaron Donald, right up there with Jeffrey Simmons, that most people would speak about when you want to talk about nose tackles in the league. Now, per Jordan Schultz, when it came to this rumor, he talked about the New York Jets and really just the situation as a whole when it comes to trading and trying to identify who's for sale. So he said there's an element of trying to figure out who are Glenn's guys and who aren't. Remember when Detroit suddenly traded Hawkinson, a building block from the last regime is not going to be a guaranteed building block in this one. And I think that's a very, very fair point, right? A lot of us may be locked into these players that have done consistently well for us in the past and assume that any success that they've been seeing this year would be something that this regime will buy into. But again, there's no reason to be tied or locked into any of these guys. Of course, outside of maybe Woody butting in or something like that, but who's really the face of this team when you look at it, right? I think that's where the conversation starts, because it is the new regime. It is, they're going to want to put their stamp and seal of approval on the roster, and if they can continue to turn things over, they'll consider it good news, right? Continue to weed out the losing culture in the worst case scenario, and at best, try to capitalize on the picks that you get back. But nothing comes to my mind necessarily, right? I would maybe say Garrett Wilson, because he kind of embodies everything that you would love to see from a fan perspective in terms of the accountability he holds the offense at large to, which has been a lot of our struggle. The fact that he is a top performer at his position for us, and the fact that he just goes about his business the right way. And he's not necessarily in the limelight either, which I think could rub some guys wrong in the same way that Sauce Gardner is, right? So I would probably say him. You could definitely easily go defense and say Quinnen Williams could potentially be that guy as well. But that would be the question here, right? Who definitely becomes Aaron Glenn's guys? And who, even in the midst of success, do you look at and say, maybe this doesn't make sense in the long term to try to make these things work out? Connor Hughes had some interesting points here in regards to why this could be a situation. For one, he called out the fact that Quinnen Williams, per news coming out of his camp, is unhappy. And I don't think this should be a shocker to anybody, because even prior to the Aaron Glenn hiring, or at least when it was announced, there was a tweet he put out there about, oh great, another rebuild, right? Kind of uncharacteristic from Quinnen, but it lets you know his, and I'm sure everybody else's mindset on that team, like, here we go again. I'm going to have to suffer through more losing before I even have a shot at winning, and that's if they really know what they're doing. You fast forward to an 0-7 start to the season, and per Connor Hughes here, he says there are rumblings around there that Quinnen Williams is unhappy. That's the perception outside of Florham Park. Aaron Glenn at some point during the season tried to smooth some things over and say that he's had a conversation with Quinnen, he's bought into the plan, and Quinnen has said all of the right things. But even when you look at some of his recent press conferences and the few rare times that we've seen him in recent weeks, he looks just kind of worn out, like emotionally drained, mentally fried. Doesn't really have the answers, for one, because it's also uncharacteristic that the defense is necessarily a problem for them as well. So when you just look at years and years and years of losing, early tenures of his career where people question whether he was worth the top 3 draft pick, and even now since questioning whether he's necessarily truly in that top 5 spot now, let's just call it post Aaron Donald, it could be waxing, right? It could be really waning on a person that wants to go out there and play the game to win a championship, and to know that for your entire career that may not be the case. And you can still make the argument he's in his prime and probably still has a couple of prime years left. Does he really potentially want to waste that with the New York Jets? And I don't know if he'd force a trade per se, but this could be a situation where the Jets come to him and they say, hey, look, we're receiving these calls. Here's the offers on the table. We understand everything you've done for us, but we also want to be open to, if you decide you want to move on, no harm, no foul. He does go on to state, I was told by somebody very tied into this situation, that the Jets are probably looking at a 2 for him. The reason for that is there's no substantial guarantee money left on his deal. So what that means is, much like kind of with Harrison Phillips, for example, these are guys that are going to want to have the conversations so they have a sense of job security, right? Especially in the case of injury, et cetera here. But you're essentially looking at not only needing to trade him, but another team also needing to get comfortable with having to restructure that contract or offer additional money in order to retain him for those additional 2 years of control that they have. You're hitting him at a prime spot, right? He's doing really well this year. So it's also not like you're necessarily buying low and being able to sell high, or at least reap the rewards of that situation, if you will. I don't know if I would settle for a 2, though. I think he's done enough to be worthy of needing to spend a first-round pick for, especially if he does go to a team that we're talking playoffs for, late first. You're not going to find another player of Quinnen Williams' caliber right out of the gate like that 9 times out of 10 in the late rounds, in the late first round. So I would assume that it'd be worth it, but it would still be a bit of a surprise to me, right? To see them actually pull the trigger, I think would be a shock. Who could even use someone of his talents? Every team, every single team out there. So if there's another team that also happens to be rebuilding and they want something to try to help jumpstart that, right? Maybe they have 1 or 2 pieces on that line and he could be that third answer. Then it would make sense for them as well. But to think that all of these guys that have been staples of what we've seen, at least for the few small successes we've had on that side of the ball, could potentially get out of here. We've heard Quinnen Williams, we've heard Jermaine, we've heard Will McDonald, we've heard MC2. People are even coming around to this conversation of, well, let's just trade Sauce Gardner. He doesn't create turnovers anyways. It's kind of insane. But let me know what you guys think. Is he an absolutely non-negotiable, or is there a trade package that could force you to make that call? Appreciate the support as always. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.